Our next presenter is Deb Morrison. Title of her talk, Climate Justice Education, a hopeful pathway towards a just and sustainable future.
So my dad often asks me, what do you build? As a scientist, I talked about the way that I build evidence bases to support environmental decision making. As an educator, I would answer that I built classroom learning experiences to help students develop strong, positive science identities. As a teacher educator, my answer would be that I build professional learning experiences to really help teachers unpack injustices in their classrooms and in themselves. Now, as a learning scientist, I struggle with that question. It's complicated, and it involves complex networks of collaborators, both in the state, nationally, and across the world. Here in Washington State, we're engaged in a collaborative effort called ClimeTime. It's a climate justice education initiative that's really focusing on how teachers, supporting teachers in a variety of ways to engage in emerging climate science learning and also in new science standards. This type of work really involves teachers who are specifically working with historically marginalized populations, but many other teachers in the state are taking advantage of this effort. You can find out more about the effort generally, which is quite vast and broad, at climetime.org. Participants in the effort are really engaged in ways of collaborating and innovating that involve both school and community-based educators, tribal communities, scientists, and community-based organizations. Teacher educators and leaders across the state are designing professional learning opportunities that are innovative in many ways. For example, educators in these experiences are encouraged to take a justice-centered stance. That can mean a lot of things. For example, teachers might engage in exploring different types of phenomena that are community-centered, that engage in aspects of action-oriented work, and that help students really connect to work in science and engineering in their own contexts. Students in these types of learning experiences might, so for instance, a phenomena could be something like increase in the severity of droughts in a rural area. And students engaged in experiences in this type of space would find that they are engaged in place-based learning that is both cross-cultural and intergenerational. So for example, they might go out into communities and explore different types of agricultural practices that mitigate and create resilience in the communities around drought. This might involve people like tribal elders, migrant populations. It could involve scientists and community-based organizations and environmentalists. It could involve a number of different businesses. All of those different participants in the effort would learn together from each other, and the students would also learn in that space. This type of cross-cultural and intergenerational learning is really critical when students are starting to think about the data that they engage in. Database practices are one of the key science practices that we come to understand and learn. And what constitutes data is actually a cultural norm. So students might engage in things like precipitation and temperature data, crops, different types of crops and how drought resistant they are, but they might also engage in oral traditions of data, stories and narratives that deepen the history in the place that they are. These types of multiple data sources organized around different types of participants in their learning help students to start to think about the way in which different cultural communities contribute to the knowledge and practices of science. It also helps students think about the ways in which science can be used for community decision-making, and that decision-making that uses science also impacts issues of justice in their own spaces. So in thinking about this type of work, teachers across the state are starting to engage much more broadly in the ways in which climate justice education is happening. One teacher in particular was commenting on how she radically changed all of her assessment and activity after participating in this type of sustained professional learning. And it caused her to really think about how she was leveraging student voice. So the idea that she going to hear her students in a multitude of different ways and adjust her instruction to inform the next steps. So in this way, the teacher is engaging not only in curricular reform, but she's engaging in justice-centered pedagogy that's deeply iterating at a local level with the students that she works with. This type of effort across the state is really helping teachers and educators and science leaders in the state learn about new ways to think about climate justice education. So now, when I'm asked about what it is that I build systems of climate justice education in deep collaboration with a wide variety of participants and communities. This type of education is justice and place-based, justice situated and place-based. It's community-centered, action-oriented. It starts to break down historic barriers around disciplines and sectors. It also looks at the idea of being incredibly cross-cultural and intergenerational and who is involved in those spaces. So when my dad asks me, what is it that you build? In short, I tell him that I build systems of learning that help us foster a just society that is deeply ingrained in a sustainable environment, and I do that through climate justice education.